This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. There are a lot of characters in the Republican Party, many who have different agendas. Some are just flamboyant bomb throwers whose only agenda is chaos. Your Marjorie Taylor Greenes, your Matt Gaetzes, they don't really serve a purpose. They're not looking for future higher office, which leads me to the other side, the other camp. And those are people like Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem from South Dakota. And they seek recognition. They seek to bolster their reputations among Republicans and set themselves up for higher office, whether that be actually running for president of the United States first and foremost, or being picked, as I believe Kristi Noem wants, picked as vice president by someone, whether that be Donald Trump in 2024 or possibly by Ron DeSantis. Kristi Noem is that bomb thrower. She is in the mold of someone like a Matt Gaetz or a Marjorie Taylor Greene or more like a Lauren Boebert. But she is very calculated in what she's doing. She recently sent troops to the southern border. She sent South Dakota National Guard, which doesn't share a border with Mexico if you're geographically limited in your understanding of the layout of America. I mean, it almost borders Canada. It's not a southern border state. And so she sends the border troops there. A lot of people wondered why. Of course, the reason is so she can visit the border, raise her profile on a national level, and be looked upon favorably by Republicans. She was on Fox and Friends just moments ago where this took place.
Let's bring in South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem to talk about the border. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for coming on. Beautiful backdrop there of Mount Rushmore. I know that I know you went down to the border recently. You're sending your National Guard out to help impacted states, and you called this border crisis a human tragedy. Why?
It is. I went down there to visit my National Guard. I sent about 48 soldiers down there 30 days ago. We just extended that another 30 days. They are in the most critical part of the southern border where we see a lot of trafficking of humans and a lot of trafficking of drugs crossing that's impacting our state and the entire Midwest and country, besides what you guys have been talking about all morning, and that's the illegal aliens that are coming over that border by the tens of thousands. So my Guard was perfectly suited for this mission. They also work very well with the Texas National Guard and local Border Patrol, but they're alarmed as well as I am by what's happening down there and how this facilitation of in-migration is happening by the White House.
Sure. You were called out by Dr. Anthony Fauci because Sturgis is evidently something he wasn't invited to. It's a problematic. Even outdoors on a motorcycle, you would think would be one of the safest places to be. Listen to what he said about one of the most important events in your state.
It's understandable that people want to do the kinds of things they want to do. They want their freedom to do that. But there comes a time when you're dealing with a public health crisis that could involve you, your family, and everyone else, that something supersedes that need to do exactly what you want to do.
Governor?
It's shocking to me that he continues to pick on Republican governors, people who love their freedoms, and he ignores what's happening at the border.
Maybe he's not talking about the border because he's not a Republican bomb thrower, Kristi Noem. And to reply that it's shocking to hear what Anthony Fauci said when all he's talked about was being concerned about the very real life-threatening ramifications of mishandling this public health crisis that we found ourselves in for over a year and a half. What is shocking about a doctor who has dedicated his life to healing being concerned about people dying? What's shocking, Kristi Noem, is that you sent fewer than 50 troops to the border and then went down there to visit them. Not at all for a photo op, huh? And Brian Kilmeade's little quip there about he didn't get invited to Sturgis. as though there's an invitation list for Sturgis. And that it's outdoors on motorcycles. There's no way anybody could catch COVID. Have you seen photos of Sturgis? The tiny town of Sturgis that is inundated with tens of thousands of attendees, shoulder to shoulder, bumper to bumper with one another. It is absolutely a concern for medical professionals and pandemic responders that it might end up being a super spreader event. Hopefully, the majority of the individuals there are vaccinated. I have my doubts. But this is pandering to the highest order. Another story about Kristi Noem is revolving around critical race theory. That they are now changing the curriculum in South Carolina for elementary school and up to remove teaching about indigenous peoples' history and culture. Reading from the Star Tribune, indigenous history, culture cut from the South Dakota standards. Teachers, educators, and other South Dakota citizens charged with crafting new state social studies standards said Tuesday that Governor Kristi Noem's administration deleted many elements intended to bolster students' understanding of Native American history and culture from their draft standards. This is important because in South Carolina, there is a large indigenous population. I grew up in northern Idaho. The town I grew up in is on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation. I had classmates. I still have friends with whom I went to school who are indigenous. They're native. So to not teach the history of people who are citizens of the country, residents of South Carolina, would be a disservice to all of the children, not just the ones who have that culture and share that history with one another. And this is all pandering to the critical race theory boogeyman argument right now, that particular culture war that the right is trying to inflame. Continuing on with the article, members of the working group appointed by the Department of Education to review and update the standards said they were caught by surprise on Friday when the department released a document with significant changes. New standards are released every 7 years. They said changes made to the draft they submitted in late July gave it a political edge they had tried to avoid, instead aligning with the Republican governor's rhetoric on what she calls patriotic education. So let's extrapolate that. Let's line that out. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean that teaching indigenous history and culture to elementary students and above is unpatriotic? What could be more patriotic than honoring every facet of the American citizenry and their lived experience? Certainly, the native indigenous people of America, their story matters. It matters a lot to the country because they played an integral role in our history. They were the subject of genocide, forced marches, bioweapons attacks, murder at the hands of the white majority. It's worth talking about. It is our history, not just theirs. And she's afraid of it because it's not patriotic. Disgusting. One last quote here. Here we are again. The native population is not worthy of being taught, said Sherry Johnson, the educator director with the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And a member of the working group. I feel it is important for all students to learn. This is how you combat racism and you build resiliency. Sherry Johnson couldn't be more correct about that. This is disgusting. This is how you build commonality among people. It's hard to hate somebody when you understand them, you know their past, their culture, their history. You eat their food. You share a table with them. Commonality is how we break down barriers. And commonality is exactly what the Republican Party is fighting against, especially when they buck up against critical race theory, which nary one of them can actually explain. Disgusting. You can call, leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can email me a regular old-fashioned email to daily@dollemore.com. I would love to hear from you. I appreciate you guys' patience while I'm guest hosting for David Pakman. Thank you for tuning in there. Thanks for sticking around here. Tell a friend of someone who may be interested in the content that I produce. I appreciate it. I'd love to see you follow me on social media. Connect with me there. Mix it up with me on the Twitter, the TikTok, even Instagram. And if you appreciate what I do and I bring you value, I would appreciate it very much if you would consider supporting my work here on the platform. For as little as $2 a month, $1.99 a month, you can click the join button, see what's involved, and become a channel member, which helps support and produce the content here on the platform. If you are already giving to someone on Patreon and you're familiar and comfortable with that platform of support, you can go to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast and support me there. Independent media is very important, especially in these days. Stories, some serious, some not, oftentimes don't get in the 3-topic of the day rotation on CNN or MSNBC. And it's important that some of these things get talked about. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Until I do, be genuine and take care of one another.